And welcome back to Coast, the open line portion of the program. As we have been reporting all night long, President Barack Obama has announced that U.S. Special Forces operating in Pakistan killed Osama bin Laden. He was shot in the head while he was hiding out at a compound in Pakistan, in a mansion. This place apparently was specially designed for someone of wealth and prominence. The bizarre part of the story comes tonight as Richard C. Hoagland continues to monitor the networks for this story that already Osama bin Laden has been buried at sea. Let's bring Richard in before we go to open line calls. Richard, I've got to tell you, this adds a very bizarre twist to a story that many Americans have already questioned. Why in the world would they not keep the body to convince the world that we indeed have a dead Osama bin Laden?
Absolutely, George. You know, you and I both seen firsthand some pretty amazing historical events go down, but I got to say, I am almost speechless, and for me, that's saying something. If I had written this as some kind of a plot or tried to imagine some kind of deep, multi-level conspiracy, I would never have written that within hours of the president announcing the culmination of a 9-year effort to get the guy who did 9/11, which is everyone's perception, that we would disappear the body at sea where it can never be checked. This just makes no sense. It is, to quote a famous person a few minutes ago, this is insane. So what would be a scenario which would make this less insane? If bin Laden had been killed as Doug reported and Benazir Bhutto reported on the BBC some years ago, back in 2007, years ago, and this is a staged event at an appropriate time for other reasons, symbolic reasons, which we can get into in a minute if you want.
Sure.
In which case, I would believe that the guy living in that compound was a body double. Remember, Saddam Hussein used to have...
He had many.
And it was always a question when we tried to get him during the war, did we get him or did we get a double? Well, if our guys went in, again, the watchword of this is the lie is different at every level. So you can assume that our guys went in on the good faith that they were going to get Osama bin Laden.
Exactly.
And bodyguards shoot at them. They get into a firefight. Either he is killed by one of his own, paid off so that the body is there, and our guys just pick it up, or one of our guys killed him with a lucky shot or something, and we still picked up the body. That reads correctly. Now you get to the weird part where he's flown to Afghanistan. That's the next intel we have, and then somehow buried at sea. I mean, this just makes no sense because the most important part of this is the body. The evidence is the body.
That's
and to prove, I can finish my point, to a totally skeptical world that the Americans, in fact, have done this, you would need to have A, DNA, B, the body so you could compare it forensically, phrenologically, and there's going to be a lot of skeptical people in the Muslim world who are going to say, "Oh, he's alive and living well," and the Americans just put out a cover story. There are so many parts of this that don't hang together. For instance, Pakistan this morning is claiming that they were in on it, and the Americans are claiming they weren't in on it. That they told absolutely no one. And of course, given the Pakistani security service and their close links with Al Qaeda, you would hardly want to bring Pakistan into an operation like this.
That's
if you
right.
really were going to go and do this, right?
That's right. This is, I'm shaking my head.
You really are, and you actually sound as dumbfounded as I am.
It just doesn't make any sense. I'm telling you, if I were the President of the United States and I came out and made this major announcement and said we have his body, to me that was tantamount to telling the world we're going to display it, we're going to show it to you, we're going to prove to you that we got this evil villain. And then an hour and a half later to say he's been buried at sea? Yep. First of all, I got to ask you, do you think President Barack Obama even knew that was happening?
No. I see this as major insurrection in the ranks among insiders. There is a food fight going on. I see this as the tip of the proverbial iceberg in that there's a lot of other stuff going on that we're not privy to. And as I said to you earlier tonight in I see ritual fingerprints all over this, even Doug.
Here's my theory. Inasmuch as all the networks now are reporting he's been buried at sea, right?
Yep.
Because we were questioning whether they said they were going to bury him later. We're making the assumption now tonight, everyone, that he has indeed been buried at sea, happened about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. I'm going to also make an assumption that I don't think President Barack Obama knew about this. And I think whether you like his politics or not, that's not where I'm going right now. I think the president was set up. I think this will make him look as dumb as you can get, and people will not believe him. I think he's been set up.
Well, this comes on the heels of what happened on Friday, which was the president was going to NASA, to Cape Canaveral, to witness the last launch of the space shuttle in Endeavour, and suddenly they can't go. In fact, it happened in such a bizarre fashion that the astronauts are in the van on the way to the pad, and they make a U-turn to come back to the Launch Control Center. That has never happened. There are many bizarre aspects about this weekend, again, because of ritual numbers. The royal wedding, which is part of this, which is a long discussion we don't have time to get into tonight. The point is, I think we should all be extremely skeptical of anything coming out of Washington right now, and we need to ask deeper questions about, has this administration been sabotaged from within by people in some intelligence agency who have taken matters into their own hands to either set this president up, or he was not included in the entire plan to which he is incidental, because now they can claim they have the body, they can produce DNA, because remember, he has been seen in American hospitals in the Middle East in years past before the actual 9/11 incident went down.
Well, and he was also Tim Osman working for the CIA. He was 2 miles from my studio in L.A. years ago when the CIA was carting him all. But let me ask you this. If the president tonight made his statement the way he did, and then right at the end of it said, by the way, we are burying him at sea in the next hour and a half, what would you think about that statement? It would make everything suspect, wouldn't it?
Totally.
He didn't know about it.
No. This is, well, look, if you're looking again at rituals, the idea that this was announced on May 1st. May 1st has a very ancient tradition going back through Middle Eastern Europe in terms of rituals and sacrifices and, new beginnings, the end of the old, beginning of the new. If you want to put a completed on the war on terror, to clear the decks for something new, getting rid of Osama bin Laden as a person, as the significator, and you only need to look at all the reaction around the world from this to indicate that that's correct, would be the way to do it. The problem is we live in a very sophisticated world now where an official government says, we've done this. People are not going to believe it without the evidence, and the evidence has just disappeared.
I got to tell you, my friend Matt Drudge, DrudgeReport.com, will be all over this, as he has been all night.
I would hope so.
When we get into this story about burial at sea, here we go. I'm making the assumption that the major networks that have been reporting this, Fox, ABC, NBC, CNN, know what they're saying.
Well, they are obviously not dependent on one source, and with a story like this, wouldn't your first reaction be to call more than one source that you trusted over the years to get them out of bed if necessary?
Yes.
The fact that they're all on board with he was buried at sea sometime Monday morning, which means in the last, 2 hours, 3 hours? Within
2 hours after apparently he was shot, or the president told us he had been killed, they've buried him at sea. He's gone.
Yeah. Which is the perfect way to get rid of the evidence.
He's now fish food.
Yep. And the world will not believe, particularly the Arab world, the Muslim world, is not going to believe this. Al-Qaeda is not going to believe this unless one of his lieutenants, like El-Ziri, I keep mispronouncing his name,
Zawahiri.
and confirms it, which he may not, because if this, in fact, is a plot to either set the president up or to destabilize the Middle East in a way that we get some kind of pushback, some kind of terror incident, then, the only thing that could stop that would be if bin Laden himself came out on television and said, I'm still here, which I don't think is going to happen.
No, I don't either. But, here's part of the story. Osama bin Laden was asked to surrender by U.S. troops before he was shot dead. That's more information that's coming out. But why, in God's name, would you get rid of the body? If we had Adolf Hitler, do you think we would burn him or bury him at sea? No.
George, you're almost making a conspiracy believer out of me.
It took a lot, too, believe me. All right, Richard, I'm going to let you go. Good job tonight. Thanks for monitoring things for us.
One last footnote.
Yep.
You have Dr. Judy Wood on Tuesday evening.
Tuesday night,
discussing her forensic analysis, her exhaustive analysis of what really happened to the World Trade Center. This is going to give that conversation an entirely new and extremely important perspective, because something big is going on the world stage, and Dr. Wood's analysis needs to be in the forefront of what really happened if it didn't happen the way the official story has been put down.
Well, then listen to this one. Webmaster Lex sends me this special message. He said, this is from Sky News. This is breaking right now, that the U.S. decided to bury him at sea because it would have been difficult finding a country willing to accept the remains of the world's most wanted terrorist. Can you believe that one?
No.